Okay, so here we are to present CPSS, Culturally Proficient School Systems, for our Edina Public Schools paraprofessionals and many other staff members, actually.
Welcome. Thank you for being a part of this great school district, and thank you for the time and attention today to this training.
I am Kani Saik. I am the admin dean at Normandale Elementary.
And I am Annie Schilling. I manage the enrichment team for Edina Community Ed here at the school district.
And one way we have found to introduce ourselves is to use this wheel of power or wheel of privilege. Because when I think about my own identity and in regards to this wheel where power is at the center here and being more marginalized is towards the margins of the wheels. As a Black woman, my skin color makes me part of a marginalized group. And as a doctor in education, my formal education gets me closer to power here in the post secondary.
I think all of us, as we go through this training and we learn about these tools of cultural proficiency, we find our place somewhere on this wheel. So for some of us, it's more apparent. It's an outward expression of how we are marginalized, whether it be skin color or gender identity or any number of things. For people like me, um, I might not on the surface appear to be part of a marginalized community, but I can tell you that I have been, and I have very close family members who are. I have close family members that have had a lifelong struggle with severe mental illness. I am the child of an immigrant, and all of these things have placed me farther away from that position of power. And those experiences in my life have led me to want to participate in this training and to help all of us who are helping the community of Edina Public Schools um, help each and every student find their place and belong.
Great. So moving along, in our presentation here, we would like to recognize the importance that paraprofessionals play in our district and how you impact students and how you participate in our vision of making sure that students discover their possibilities and thrive. Because day in and day out, we see paraprofessionals building very strong relationships with students. I have my very own examples of that because I have a child who is on an IEP, and his paraprofessionals just make a world of difference for him. They make sure that not only academically he's well prepared in the classroom, but he is also connected to them and connected to his classmates through the support that they are providing him every day. And being able to help students participate in the least restrictive environment possible, meaning the classroom. Many times that would not be possible if we didn't have paraprofessionals in our buildings. So thank you is all I can say, and I'm really glad that you will get to see CPSS in this training and keep using it in the classroom with the students that you are working with.
We know firsthand, we see it day after day, week after week, month after month in our roles here in the district. We see how you lead the students with dignity. You have very close relationships with the students. You really are critical to the success of each and every student because you really are on that front edge of the student experience. You're right there with the student experiencing everything that they go through each day. And we will come back to this phrase, you are very good people doing hard work. And again, to echo what Dr. Seck has said. We thank you very, very much.
So our learning targets for this training are it's a lot, but we will cover these. And knowing that CPSS is a 4-day training that we have in the district, ultimately all staff members of Edina Public Schools will go through the 4-day training. So this is a condensed version of an hour. And during this hour, we will define equity. We will introduce the 4 tools of cultural proficiency. We will study practical application, which is also always a passion of mine, is being able to show practical ways of applying our learning into the classroom. So of the 4 tools, and our main focus will be on the continuum, which is one of the tools of cultural proficiency.
Before we really dig into these tools of cultural proficiency, I want to take a moment and ground ourselves in the vision of Edina Public Schools. And I'm going to read this um, out loud so that it's top of mind as we discuss um, how and why we do what we do for these students. Defining excellence to achieve the vision of Edina Public Schools is for each and every student to discover their possibilities and thrive. For me, the words that really stand out are discover, possibilities, and thrive. When we do the good, hard work that we do, this is the opportunity that children have. They can discover their possibilities and thrive.
Mm-hmm. Those are powerful words. And Annie, I am with you on those words that are standing out for you. And each and every never gets lost on me that we cannot discount any of our students. So each and every student in this district counts for us, is important to us, and their sense of belonging and them being able to thrive is important. Here's a quick message. Usually with Google Meets, it may be difficult to hear the sound, so we will regardless play this video. It's a welcome video for the 4-day training from Dr. Stanley, hoping that it will work in a Google Meet.
Greetings, everyone. This is Stacy Stanley, your Edina Public Schools Superintendent. I am thrilled that you are starting the Culturally Proficient School Systems, or CPSS, cohort. Our past diversity and equity and inclusion efforts have uniquely positioned us to take this further step to establish a system where all 1,603 staff members and 9,000 early childhood through 12th grade students and their families work and learn in a community that values our collective strengths and adapts to all of our differences. Our Edina Public Schools vision is for each and every student to discover their possibilities and thrive. A core belief in Edina Public Schools is that we believe in the inherent dignity of all people. We celebrate individuality and we value and appreciate diversity. Your journey in understanding and applying the tools in your work context will help all of Edina Public Schools family realize our vision and core belief and ensure each and every Edina Public Schools student, employee, and family knows and feels deep in their souls that they belong. This is what we call an inside-out journey. This is the time for mirrors, for deep self-reflection, so that you can make a difference in your day-to-day work and circles of influence. Now, enjoy your time over the next several days, and I can't wait to see the extraordinary impact of your learning in the coming weeks, months, and years. Have a great day, everyone.
So it's important to acknowledge who developed this training of cultural proficiency. Terry Cross, he is a national and internationally known speaker and humanitarian. He is of Indigenous heritage here in the United States. He initially developed this programming for the healthcare industry. He saw the importance of everybody being treated with respect and finding equality and inclusion. In 1989, he formally brought this to the healthcare industry and then transitioned this to the education field. This is when he was given permission to use this in an educational setting. Dr. Trudy Arriaga has brought it here to Edina, and we've had the pleasure of working with her in order to become trained, in order to train you.
So, this is one of the quotes that are so important to our group of trainers or facilitators for this training that we have it every time we meet with our groups. Diversity is a fact. And this is something that nobody can refute. All we need to do is look in our classrooms, look at the faces of the students, hear the students, listen to them, and then we will know that diversity is present in our schools, in our classrooms, in our small groups when we are working with student small group, and whether it is students having different academic backgrounds and having different academic abilities, having different social emotional skills, and being able to follow directions right away when they are given to them or needing reminders. All of those are signs of diversity in our classroom. It is just a fact. And when diversity is present, we have a choice to ignore it and then just do business as usual and not take into account the different needs we see in our classroom and the different issues that may arise just because of the differences that exist in our student body, or we make a choice to treat people in an equitable manner. We choose equity. And by choosing equity, we are really meeting the needs as suggested by this image. Equality, which will be, I am just going to give my instructions to these students, all of them at once in the same manner. And then there will be some who will understand the first time. There will be others, because diversity is a fact. There will be other students who may not understand the directions of the task that they are supposed to do in your small group, for example. So equality would be to just give the direction and keep moving on. Equity is where you will really need people's needs, as shown by these bicycles. For sure, this person here on the wheelchair cannot participate. Whereas here, every single person has a bike that fits their needs, then they can participate. Same thing in the classroom. If we see that someone needs repetition, needs reminders, and we provide those reminders to that individual, then we are being equitable. So it's a choice. And CPSS is urging us to always make that choice. Inclusion is an action because we need to be actively including students for it to happen. If we are not intentional, we will be leaving people behind. So inclusion is an action. It is something that we are doing every day to make sure that needs are met and students can participate so they can all discover their possibilities and thrive. And the outcome of this choice of equity and actively including people is belonging. Once those things are put in place, people feel like they belong. And when a student feels like he or she or they belong, that means that they are valued, they feel appreciated, they feel that they are participating in the classroom community. So this is a definition of equity that Dr. Arriaga shared with us. That's very powerful. I'll just read through it. Each person across all dimensions of difference will have access to the opportunities, the resources, and support available to foster one's unique potential without giving up who they are or limiting who they can become. This is powerful because this is pretty much saying that each of our students will show up with their whole self, with their whole being, with the knowledge and the confidence that regardless of all their multiple identities, they will be accepted, they will be honored, they will be valued in our schools and in our classrooms. and that they do not need to be somebody that they are not. They can come with their whole self and still be able to discover their possibilities and thrive.
So knowing that the vision of Edina Public Schools is for each and every student to discover their possibilities and thrive, here's a big question. Who is responsible for this equity? I think it's all of us. It's all of us doing the work, all of us good people doing the hard work to be sure that everybody is included and is presented with equity so that they can come to us with their whole selves, exactly who they are, and discover their possibilities. So that leads us to the tools of cultural proficiency. There are 4 tools, and we won't have time today to touch on all of them. As Dr. Seck said at the beginning, it is the goal of Edina Public Schools for all of the employees to go through the full 4-day training, but we are happy that we get to touch on these today. So the 4 tools, I can give definitions, the barriers. And Dr. Seck, if you could go to the next slide. The barriers. These are caveats that assist in responding effectively to resistance to change. What we're looking for are ways to remove the barriers. We want to find the ways to respond effectively in the resistance to change. The barriers are those resistance mechanisms that we all have. Number 2, the guiding principles. These are the principles that underlie the values of this approach of cultural proficiency training. The continuum, we will be talking about this continuum today. This is a way of putting language to describing both healthy and unhealthy policies, practices, and our individual behaviors. The essential elements. These are 5 behavioral standards for measuring and planning for, growth towards, and achieving cultural proficiency.
And Annie just touched on a little bit on the barriers. So these are 4 ways that people can hinder by their behaviors, by the processes that they use, by the policies that they put in place. They can hinder cultural proficiency from happening and equity from becoming a reality. Resistance to change is one of them, just not wanting change. And many times this is natural because change is hard. We know that. But we have to get past that and make sure that this is not a barrier in front of our students so they don't achieve our vision of discovering their possibilities and thriving. Another one is an awareness of the need to change, because usually when things are going well for us, we want to keep the status quo. We may not see, why would I change something? This is working for me. There is no need to bring something different. There is no need to adapt. We have to remember, though, that equity is a choice and that diversity is a fact. So we may not be aware of changes, but we need to ask questions. We need to dig deeper, and then we will see why sometimes, or many times, we always have room for improvement in our practices so that we can actively include people. Because as we saw earlier, inclusion is an action. The presumption of entitlement, just a feeling that I've worked for this, it's something that I need to have, I should have, because of my hard work, I am deserving of it. So that's also another barrier to equity. That's another barrier to being culturally proficient. And then the systems of oppression. We know about sexism, we know about ableism, we know about racism, and many others that are in place and put marginalized groups in a system of oppression that makes it hard for them to discover their possibilities and thrive. So these are barriers that we need to be aware of so we can address them as we are working in our culturally proficient journey. This is a question that we like to ask about the barriers to remind ourselves of what can we do. How might we be in the way? Because many times by asking this question, we become more aware of the possibilities of how we can make things different and how we can be more equitable in our practices, our policies, and our behaviors. This is a poem written by Sharuk Mustafa Ibrahim, who's a young Egyptian poet, and it's very powerful, especially for us being in the classrooms and interacting with students, with children on a daily basis. I'll read it. May you never be the reason why someone who loved to sing doesn't anymore, or why someone who dressed so differently now wears standard clothing, or why someone who always spoke of their dreams so widely is now silent about them. May you never be the reason someone gave up on a part of themselves because you were demotivating, non appreciative, hypercritical, or even worse, sarcastic about them. So, the continuum is the tool that we are going to be focusing on today. The question that we asked was, how might we be in the way? Now, for the continuum, the question is that the way it should always be? And this is very powerful. This addresses traditions that may have been hurting marginalized groups without us being aware of the need to change. But by asking this question, we are challenging ourselves to see things differently, to address issues differently, and to make sure that whatever the ways we had before are being changed so they're culturally proficient, so they meet the needs of our diverse student groups that we have in our schools. So, is that the way it should always be? If that question was not asked, many people would not be where they are right now, including me, because I arrived in Edina back in 1999 as an intern here at Normandale French Immersion. And the way it was you are a intern, you do 1 year, and then you go back to your home country. But I was approached by some of the team members, the teachers that I worked with, because there was an opening in the grade level at the end of that school year. And they asked if I could join their team and move from being a teaching assistant to being a teammate, a teacher in fourth grade. So those people ask this question: is that the way it should always be? We can diversify. We can find people that maybe before were not fitting the profile of who should be a teacher in the school. So this is a powerful question to ask if we want to move on the continuum. And talking about moving on this continuum, it has two sides. This is the unhealthy side of the continuum. Here we have the healthy side of the continuum. The unhealthy side of the continuum stems from barriers. So barriers informed them, this part. When we do not see the need to change, we are more likely to be sitting in this area of the continuum. When we resist to change, we are sitting here. When we are abiding by the systems of oppressions and what they dictate people to do, we are sitting in this side. And then the guiding principles, which are the underlying values of this system, of this CPSS system that we have now in Edina, those inform the healthy side. We use the analogy of the open door to describe this continuum. So the first part, which is which is actually the unhealthiest step on this continuum, is cultural destructiveness. And this, when you look at a door, it's about slamming a door on somebody. not letting them in. Not only you're not letting them in, but you're pretty much slamming the door in their faces so they do not enter our system. This is obviously unwelcoming. The second one, still in the unhealthy side of the continuum, is cultural incapacity. And this is making somebody's culture feel wrong. Like their culture is not right. It's not something that we should be seeing here because they are doing something that does not fit what we see as valuable. So that is shutting doors on people. And then the last one on the unhealthy side of the continuum is cultural ignorance. And for this one, we are just not aware or not at all looking at what are the differences and how can we meet the needs of different groups. The door is starting to open, but still not quite there. So these three, destructiveness, incapacity, and ignorance, form the unhealthy side of the continuum and are informed by the barriers. Now, on the healthy side of the continuum, we have cultural precompetence. Now we are being aware of differences and we are working on addressing them. We may not address them in an appropriate manner at all times, but the doors are opening on people. People are being let in our system. Cultural competence. Now the door is wide open. We know that there are differences. We know that these differences need to be addressed, and we are putting the policies, the behaviors, the processes that help people come in and feel welcome with our doors being wide open. And then the last one, which we are all thriving for, is cultural proficiency. And this is not only the door is open, but we are escorting people through the door. And that's the ultimate step. And this is also where we need to keep asking questions for ourselves. Are we doing enough? Is there anything else that we should be adding? It's a lot of questioning when we get to proficiency. And we also have to know that there is not one person who is culturally proficient, checked, done. This is not a checklist. This is something that we are always running our practices through and see where they stand in the continuum and trying to move them on the healthy side. Some of what I do can fall here, and some of it will fall here. My goal is to bring everything on the healthy side as much as I can.
Okay, we're gonna take a few minutes to do some practical evaluations. One of the ways that we can move from the unhealthy side of that continuum to the healthy side is first identifying where our barriers lie, and we all have them. All right, to help us refresh and wake up just a little bit, I'm going to do some call and response. So I'm going to say some phrases, and I want you, if you can, out loud to say the first thing that comes to your mind. If not, just let the first thing come to your mind. When I say peanut butter, you say jelly, maybe. When I say salt, you say pepper. When I say macaroni, you say maybe and cheese. Sometimes people say macaroni salad. When I say cats, you say dogs, right? We all have these associations, um, things that come immediately to our mind. And all of those are fine, but not always. Let me make this a little harder. When I say black man, you say what? What comes to your mind? Maybe it's violence. Maybe it's threat. And that's not entirely your fault, right? We are inundated in cultural um, and popular culture with images of Black men being violent. We see them on the news. We're told that story over and over and over again. And of course, not everybody who is violent is a Black man, but we are told this story in our culture and it becomes ingrained in us. It becomes part of our thought process without really even knowing that's our thought process. And there's a special name for this. It's called implicit bias. We are told by culture, by media, by the world around us what to think about certain things, and it's often a barrier. Implicit bias is important to recognize that we all have it. But once the recognition happens, we can do something about it. So, how do you get past implicit bias? Dr. Seck has a very, very good quote.
Yes, thank you, Annie. And this quote stayed with me since the moment it was said in this district by Dr. Shiraki Holly, who visited our district. This was maybe back in 2015. And he said, "This is a great antidote to implicit bias. Don't let your first thought be your last one." So many times, for me, for example, as a Black woman, when I appear in a space, people, before I ever open my mouth, before I ever say my name, anything, there are a lot of ideas that may come to their mind. And that comes from what they have been conditioned to think about people who look like me. Just by the mere look at me, there may be a lot of ideas, a lot of assumptions that are being made due to this implicit bias that Annie just talked about. Now, I would love it. I would love it if that uh, first thought is something negative, which usually it would be for somebody who is Black, for example, like me. I would love for that person to say, you know what, I'm not going to let that first thought that I had about this person be my last one. I'm going to dig deeper. I'm going to learn more. I'm going to ask questions, or I will give the benefit of the doubt, something that will help that person hold on to it and not to let that first thought be their last one, especially if that first thought was a negative one. I've had experiences when I would enter a store, that I would be followed to see, I'm sure that I was doing maybe something wrong. This just happened to me last weekend. I took my kids to this place called Sky Zone. I'm sure this is bad publicity now that I'm doing, but it's just my experience. That's what happened to me last weekend. It was Saturday. I took my kids there, and we arrived at about 5:15, and at around 6:50. So 5:15 to 6:50, one of the managers approached me and said, "Do you have a membership?" I said, "Yes." And I did buy the membership for the month. I was just using it for the month, but I have the membership. And then she goes, "You do know you have 2 hours that you can spend here. No, no more. But you've been here for hours and hours and hours with your kids. You need to leave." And I asked her, "What time did I get here?" And she said, "Tell me." I said, "No, you told me I've been here for hours. So you are the one who are going to tell me how long I've been here." Then she couldn't. She didn't know. She just assumed that I was there for hours. Then she had to go and check her system, and she never came back and apologized to me. She just disappeared pretty much. I looked for her actually many times, but I could not find her. And she was wearing, it says team lead on her badge. But those are moments when I wish that person did not let her first thought be her last one about me.
If we let our first thought be our last thought, where do we land on this continuum? We are slamming doors shut. The doors are shut at the very best. The doors are still shut.
Mm-hmm.
If we move past our first thought, because as I said a bit ago, sometimes we can't help it. Sometimes that's what we've been taught by everything around us. But if you take a moment and you realize that you have implicit bias, that you're making an assumption based on something that is just not true, if you move past that, you will move to the healthy side of the continuum. Okay, here's another scenario. It's tradition. Edina is a place that's full of tradition, right? We have homecoming games and activity after activity that have always happened. And this happens in many, many school districts. We have Christmas break and we celebrate Valentine's Day and Halloween. But wait, not everybody does celebrate those holidays, right? we have taken some steps in this realm. We don't call it Christmas break anymore here in this district. We call it winter break. Valentine's Day has been celebrated in the past, but we've moved past that because not everybody celebrates Valentine's Day. I have some very specific examples from the work that I do. I schedule one of my team creates programming for after school, and I had a program that was beginning on a specific date, not thinking it was any big deal. But I got a call from a family who said, I just want to let you know our daughter really would like to take that after school chess class, but unfortunately, it starts the night of one of our holiest holidays. So she's not going to be able to take it. And I did not take that into account. So I was not that one child was not able to participate. And ever since I felt absolutely terrible that I had not taken that into account. And from that moment on, I pay very close attention to make sure that at the very least, I'm not starting programs on a holy day celebrated by some people in our district. Those decisions lead us to the healthy side. If I don't take into account and think about all the different people coming from many, many different cultures, then I stay on the unhealthy side of the continuum.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you are right on, Annie, saying that we as a district are making progress in this, in addressing the inequities that exist when it comes to celebrations. For example, when we realize that the MCAs are going, it's an important test, but it's going to happen during Ramadan, we decided that we will tweak the schedule to make sure at least that most of the tests will not fall during Ramadan when our Muslim students are fasting and not likely, in their maybe best physical abilities or mental abilities to perform at their best level in the MCAs. So those are things we are putting in place. We now have a calendar for our holidays that are observed by the multiple stakeholders in the district to make sure that we respect those and schedule events around that. So we do not force those people to just miss out on things that are happening. So the doors are being cracked open, and we are moving along the continuum when it comes to these practices.
People are served in varying ways by the dominant culture. So what we mean by that is most of the people in the school district might celebrate Christmas. Most of the people might celebrate Valentine's Day. And it's easy to fall into a pattern where, well, most families celebrate that. So why shouldn't we schedule our breaks around those holidays? And we need to make sure that all cultures are being represented and honored as we create our schedules, as we include each and every student.
Mm-hmm. And we use examples that are pretty general for the district when we think now about a paraprofessionals in a classroom working with students and knowing this, like Annie said, that people are served in varying ways by the dominant culture and being very intentional in making sure that we are asking ourselves, is that the way it's always supposed to be? Is there, a way to change it and move along the continuum? For example, if you are working with a group of students and you know that their abilities are different because diversity is a fact, like we said before, you will make sure you check in with them individually. You will make sure that students are understanding before you move on to the next step of whatever they're learning. You will make sure that you are greeting the student with a smile, each of them. And regardless of whether they rub you the wrong way, they are not listening to you the first time you talked, or you perceive that they are being disrespectful, regardless of all of that, you will always keep our vision in mind that each and every student needs to discover their possibilities and thrive. And then as the adults who work with them, we need to make that happen. It could be as simple as making sure you say their names correctly and pronounce it correctly when they come to you, so they feel valued, they feel part of the community. So there are, in our various roles that we have in the district, there are many ways that we can be culturally proficient. It doesn't need to be this big thing that we are doing for everybody. It's on our day-to-day interactions with students and with our colleagues that we can be culturally proficient. We always have that choice. As I say, equity is a choice. So every single interaction that we are having with any student, with any of our colleagues, we can make it move along this continuum and be on the healthy side of it.
This work is, as Dr. Seck mentioned before, it's not a checklist, it's ongoing and it's hard. And one of the best images that I have found to get my mind around the enormity of the work, but the importance of the work. Nando Parada was a survivor of a plane crash in the mid-century, the mid-20th century. He crashed alongside of his teammates on a soccer team. And he and one other man realized that in order to save the team or anybody from the team, they were going to have to hike off the mountain that they had crashed on. And they thought, we'll just hike to the top. And when we get to the top, we're going to look down and there'll be a valley and there'll be a town and we'll be able to go find help. So they hiked and they hiked for 3 days. And when they got to the top of that mountain, they saw a vista very much like the view that you're seeing in this slide. Many, many more mountains to climb. Every step he took, every breath he breathed trying to help his teammates was worth it. He and the other gentleman did make it to help, and they were able to save many of those teammates who had crashed in the airplane, but it took many steps. So each time we make sure that we pronounce a student's name right, each time we help a student feel included in the celebrations that are happening during school, each time we help a student feel valued for their culture, we are taking a step and we are taking that deep breath towards cultural proficiency, and it's worth it.
Yeah, it's all about moving ourselves and everything that we do through this continuum so that most of our behaviors, most of our practices can be run through this and fall on the healthy side. And it may not be that way all the time, but we need to give some grace to ourselves. And when in doubt, we will always center equity and then run it through the continuum to see where are we at right now and how can we move it along. And this is not a continuum when we say we are culturally proficient, so we are done. This is something that every single interaction that we have can be run through it. Every decision that we are making can be run through this. And for example, that's what elementary deans at different buildings did for our Connect and Assess days. We are making sure that our ML families are registering, that they are having interpreters when they are meeting with teachers, that they are prepared to have a productive conference with the teachers beforehand. And that is us thinking about what we do and how we can move it along the continuum. So the goal is for every single one of us to just make it a practice to run everything we are doing through the CPSS continuum for each and every student in Edina Public Schools to discover their possibilities and thrive.
Make sure as you make your decisions each day to think about how you're helping doors be open, and not only that, how you can help students through those doors. How can you escort them? If you use those thoughts in your decision making, you are well on your journey with cultural proficiency. And don't ever forget, we are all good people doing hard work. And again, I want to say thank you for the hard work that you do and will do. It is very important, and it is very, very valued.
And thank you so much for listening to our Google Meet here, to our training. And what we are hoping now is that you took notes. If you did not, you can replay part of this, because we will follow this with the Google form that you can fill out to let us know what were the main things you learned and then how you will apply them. It will be a very short form to just give us feedback on what you just learned. Thank you so very much for your attention.
Thank you.